So imagine lying in a hospital bed. You're 13 years old, and there's just that sterile hum of machinery all around you.
It's a terrifying picture, yeah.
Right. And a doctor, this absolute authority figure, walks in, looks you right in the eyes,
Yeah.
and tells you that you will not live past your teenage years.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
And he doesn't stop there. He says you're never going to dance again, never get married, never have kids. And then he tells you that the sooner you accept this reality, well, the easier it's going to be.
Which is just a horrific thing to tell a child.
Exactly. So put yourself in that bed. Do you accept it? Because, as we're going to see today, neuroscience tells us that the exact second you accept a terminal diagnosis like that, your brain registers the belief as a literal command.
Right. It starts a biological countdown. It actively shuts down your vital organs.
Yeah, and that's what we're getting into today. I'm your host, and welcome to today's Deep Dive. We are looking at the terrifying yet miraculous biology of belief.
And I'm your resident expert, here to help unpack the actual physiological mechanics behind all of this.
Because if you have ever felt betrayed by your own body, or if you feel trapped by a diagnosis, just stuck in this endless loop of physical or emotional pain where the experts just kind of shrug their shoulders, this deep dive is absolutely for you.
It really is. We are stepping into what I call diagnostic muddy waters.
Oh, I like that term, muddy waters.
Yeah, because usually in medicine, we rely on a visible binary system, right? Like an X-ray shows a jagged white line and boom, the problem is a broken bone. It's clear.
Right, you can see it.
Exactly. But when you step into the world of neurodevelopment or chronic pain and trauma, that X-ray machine is, frankly, utterly useless.
It doesn't show the pain.
No, it doesn't. Yet from that fog, a very precise science is emerging. We're talking about neuroplasticity today, and not as some trendy wellness buzzword you see scrolling on social media.
Right, not like a hashtag.
Right. We are looking at it as a literal biological lifeline. We have to examine why the human brain gets stuck in a state of absolute paralyzing fear and how we can actually shift it back to possibility.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our roadmap for this exploration is an incredible conversation featuring Ashleigh Di Lello.
Her story is it's unbelievable.
It really is. She's a former elite athlete, television and Broadway star, and the founder of bio-emotional healing. And our mission today is to extract the pure neuroscience from her story.
Looking at how beliefs and traumas in our daily practices physically rebuild the architecture of the nervous system.
Right. So Ashleigh's story starts as a medical thriller. She's 13, the epitome of health, training 5 hours a day in dance. And then virtually overnight, this rare viral infection just decimates her body.
Her whole system crashes.
Completely. Her liver starts shutting down. Her skin turns yellow. Her weight plummets to 90 pounds. She actually stopped looking in the mirror because she said her reflection resembled a prisoner of war.
Oh, God, that's so heartbreaking.
It is. And the exhaustion was so profound that even taking a deep breath or, uttering a single word took more cellular energy than her body could generate.
She was running on absolute empty.
Yeah. And that is the state she was in when that doctor walked in and handed her a death sentence. They even sent in a psychologist who accused her of living in denial.
Because she refused to accept it.
Exactly. She flat out refused. She had this profound realization as a kid. She told them, I know I'm dying. I can feel it. But if I accept that I'm dying, my chance of survival goes to 0%.
That level of self-awareness in a 13-year-old is staggering.
It's wild, right? She was so terrified of accepting this reality that she would force herself to stay awake at night. She was convinced that sleep meant surrendering her conscious will to live.
And intuitively, she understood something that it took neurobiologists decades to map out.
Yeah.
She recognized that surrender is not just, a philosophical concept. It is a biological switch.
Okay, wait. Let's dig into that, because I can hear people listening to this and wondering if we're drifting into pseudoscience.
Sure, it sounds a bit out there.
Yeah, like, is there actual, hard, measurable science to this idea of the will to live? Because telling yourself, I'm going to survive, when your liver is actively failing sounds like a comforting story, not a medical intervention.
Right, but it is an intensely physical, measurable cascade. The brain is constantly monitoring your conscious emotional state to dictate its subconscious survival mechanisms.
So what is physically happening when someone just accepts death?
When the brain accepts that death is inevitable, it initiates a profound shift in the autonomic nervous system. The prefrontal cortex, the logical decision-making part of the brain, essentially sends a message down saying, the fight is over, we've lost.
Like waving a white flag.
Exactly. Cease the deployment of survival resources. It pulls back on sympathetic arousal. That's the fight or flight response that keeps adrenaline and cortisol pumping.
And you need that pumping in a crisis, right?
Yes. In a crisis, that stress keeps the organs functioning.
Yeah.
But when you surrender, the brain floods the system with a parasympathetic freeze or shutdown response.
Oh, wow. So it just slows everything down.
It releases massive quantities of endorphins and endogenous opioids to numb pain. The metabolism slows to a crawl. The immune system stops mounting an inflammatory response. The body is literally preparing the tissues for death.
That is terrifying.
What's fascinating here is how her conscious refusal overrode that biological cascade. By defying the prognosis and refusing to sleep, she was forcibly maintaining high sympathetic arousal.
She was basically hacking her own stress response.
Exactly. She was forcing the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, to stay engaged, pumping the exact stress hormones she needed to keep her systems online. Her conscious refusal hijacked her biology.
So when a doctor gives a rigid diagnosis, it's a bit like a GPS system routing your drive, right?
Yeah.
The algorithm looks at the traffic, road closures, historical data, and says, destination impossible.
Right. But the GPS only predicts based on current limited variables.
Exactly. It doesn't factor in that you might just drive off-road and build a new path. Just because the GPS says the road is blocked doesn't mean you can't build a new road.
That's a great analogy.
It makes you wonder how many people listening have blindly accepted an expert's limitation on their potential, and by doing so, handed their brain the exact code to make that limitation a reality.
It happens all the time.
Maybe it wasn't a death sentence for you. Maybe it was a specialist saying your back pain is permanent, or a psychiatrist labeling you with an intractable disorder.
And the moment you internalize that label as your permanent identity, your brain begins modifying your physiology to comply with it.
That is just wow.
Yeah.
So Ashleigh spent 4 years in this teetering state between life and death. From 13 to 17, she fought this daily battle and survived. The virus actually cleared.
Which is a miracle in itself.
But surviving was only chapter 1, because she had a massive 6-year deficit in her elite dance training.
Right, and in professional athletics, you need those adolescent years to build fundamental skills and muscle memory.
And the doctors told her she lacked the physical strength to ever dance again. But Ashleigh, lying inside MRI machines for endless scans, decides to just dance in her mind.
Without any knowledge of neuroscience, she just intuitively starts visualizing.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because she didn't just casually picture a routine, she vividly visualized herself in this specific dance class on the ballroom competition floor.
She felt it so intensely that she cried tears of absolute joy while trapped in a metal tube.
Right. Now, elite Olympic athletes use this constantly now, but she did it intuitively. So how is it physically possible that thinking about a pirouette builds the capacity to execute one?
It all comes down to neural mirroring and pathway generation. The brain, for all its evolutionary brilliance, has a very specific operational blind spot.
Okay, what is it?
It does not easily distinguish between a vividly imagined event that's attached to a strong emotional signature and a physical event happening in external reality.
Wait, really? So if I imagine it vividly enough, my brain thinks it's happening?
Yes. When Ashleigh visualized with that level of specificity and joy, the motor cortex in her brain was firing the exact same sequence of motor neurons as if she were physically executing that pirouette.
That's insane.
It's Hebbian learning in a physical vacuum. Neurons that fire together, wire together. The brain responded by laying down myelin, that fatty tissue that insulates neural pathways, to make those circuits faster and stronger.
Even though her actual legs were completely stationary.
Exactly. Over 6 years, she laid down the literal physical architecture for complex elite dance. So when her body finally regained its muscular strength and she went back to the studio,
She just blew past everyone.
she rapidly surpassed peers who had been physically training 5 hours a day. She wasn't learning to dance from scratch. She was physically executing upon wiring she had already built.
It's like downloading a pre-written software program into newly capable hardware.
Yeah.
But, listening to this, it makes me realize something kind of terrifying.
The dark side of this superpower.
Yes. Because if the brain builds a lightning-fast neural highway for whatever we vividly visualize with emotion, we are all doing this every single day, just in the wrong direction.
We absolutely are. We often use this exact mechanism to inadvertently wire our brains for anxiety.
Like when you're sitting in traffic and vividly imagining your boss yelling at you.
Right. You picture the worst case scenario. You see yourself failing. You picture the doctor delivering bad news. And crucially, you feel the dread, the stomach drop. the tight chest.
You're attaching a strong emotional signature to a highly specific visualization.
Exactly. You are firing and wiring the neural pathways of catastrophe. You're creating from fear. You are physically building the roads for a trauma response to an event that hasn't even happened.
The nervous system doesn't know you're just worrying. It thinks you're under attack.
Yes, and it adapts to make you more hypervigilant for the next attack. We practice our anxiety until we are elite biological performers of panic.
Oh, well. Elite biological performers of panic. That is, I want the listener to really sit with that. What catastrophic outcomes are you vividly practicing in the shower every morning?
Because you're wiring it into your nervous system.
Right. So Ashleigh used this incredible power to reach the absolute peak of her career. She made it to the finale of So You Think You Can Dance, she headlined Broadway.
She achieved the impossible.
She really did. But then a cruel plot twist forced her to map out the neuroscience of pain itself. At age 33, at the height of her career, a failed second hip surgery plunges her into unrelenting chronic pain.
She lost everything again. Her career, her ability to walk, her business.
She couldn't even bear the physical sensation of holding her 2-year-old daughter. She described the nerve pain as an electric fire. A special kind of hell where you feel like you're made of glass, ready to shatter.
She was sleeping maybe 2 to 3 hours a night.
And there was this moment of pure desperation. She woke up in the middle of the night, found leftover OxyContin from her surgery, took it, and realized it had zero effect on the pain.
When the strongest chemical intervention fails, what is left?
Exactly. Which leads to her dark night of the soul. She's lying in the fetal position at 2 a.m., having tried over 200 regenerative injections, Western medicine, Eastern medicine, biohacking. Nothing worked.
And for the first time, she considered just giving up, asking God to take her.
But wait, this is where I push back a little. We just spent the last 20 minutes talking about how powerful her will to live was at 13.
Yeah.
How her prefrontal cortex had absolute dominance. How does someone that stubborn break?
It's a great question.
Feels like a battery, right? A battery that hasn't been drained by one big use, like leaving the headlights on, but it's been left out in the sub-zero coals for decades, and the slow leak just strips its capacity to turn the engine over.
That battery analogy perfectly illustrates the reality of prolonged trauma on the nervous system. The brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. Its job is to keep you alive by anticipating threats based on historical data.
So when her body collapsed a second time,
Her amygdala, the brain's threat center, went into absolute overdrive. It basically said, I was caught off guard once when we were 13 and we almost died. I will never turn off my alarm bells again.
so the algorithm updated to interpret everything as a threat.
Exactly. This is central sensitization. The pain was no longer just structural from the hip surgery, it was neuroplastic. Her central nervous system was misinterpreting completely safe, benign signals, like her toddler bumping her arm as a life-threatening attack.
The hardware in her leg was okay, but the software in her brain was entirely corrupt.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Ashleigh realized her nervous system had flipped a switch into pain, which meant there had to be a way to debug the software and flip it back.
And that realization birthed her 12-week bio-emotional healing process. So let's shift from her biography to extracting the specific steps for the listener. How do we rewire the alarm?
It starts with steps 1 and 2, possibility and identification.
Right. Step 1 is the paradigm shift of possibility. Before you do any intervention, you must realize the brain is plastic. You have to stop viewing your diagnosis as a permanent identity.
Which is so hard for people. They adopt the label, I am a chronic pain patient, or I'm an anxious person.
And Ashleigh talks about the role of personality here, right? High achievers and perfectionists actually have a higher correlation with severe physical and mental breakdowns.
Because they live in a state of high activation and rigidity.
So what does this all mean? Does caring too much literally make you sick? I mean, I know plenty of successful perfectionists, but they're constantly stressed. Does that translate to biological disease?
It translates directly. Perfectionism keeps the sympathetic nervous system perpetually engaged. The brain interprets the fear of failure as a literal life or death threat, constantly flooding the body with cortisol.
So the brain doesn't know the difference between missing a deadline and being chased by a tiger.
Exactly. Over time, that chronic hormonal flood leads to systemic inflammation, and the body simply breaks down.
Which perfectly explains that Hippocrates, quote from the source material, It's more important to know what sort of person has the disease than the disease the person has.
That's why we must treat the human nervous system's history, not just the symptom. You have to look for what Ashleigh calls validated beliefs.
Step 2. Identifying the pieces.
Yeah.
Writing down every impactful life event. And these validated beliefs are dangerous because you actually have proof for them.
Yes. Ashleigh believed her body was inherently broken, and she had proof. Organ failure at 13, failed surgeries. Even her dentist told her, "You heal weirdly."
The dentist basically gave her medical validation that she was broken.
And the brain is a compliance machine. It will enforce whatever identity you give it. If you believe you are broken, it will inhibit cellular repair to match that identity.
So to everyone listening, what validated beliefs do you hold about yourself that might actually be keeping you stuck? Maybe it's, my family has a history of bad back, so I'm doomed.
You have to identify that trapped.
But just identifying the trauma isn't enough, right? You can't just think your way out of a physiological trap using logic. We have to flush it out of the system.
That brings us to steps 3 and 4, processing and self-compassion. We have to move trauma out of the subconscious.
Ashleigh uses a 5-step writing modality for this, backed by over 200 studies. And the goal isn't amnesia, right? You can't delete the memory.
No, the goal is removing the emotional charge to allow for post-traumatic growth, moving it from the amygdala, where it's an active threat, to the prefrontal cortex, where it's just a historical event.
She gave that incredible example of a client with severe trauma who had physical shaking for 20 years. And after processing the trauma out of her nervous system, the shaking just stopped.
20 years of tremors gone because the emotional charge was flushed.
But doing that work requires safety, which brings up step 4, reestablishing trust and self-compassion. Because trauma brings massive self-blame. Why did I stay in that relationship? Why did I ignore the symptoms?
And the biology of shame is terrifying. Neuroimaging shows that harsh self-criticism, guilt, and shame trigger the brain's alarm bells.
This is the most mind-blowing fact to me. This actually causes neural synapses to lock up.
High levels of cortisol actively inhibit the hippocampus, which is the brain region responsible for learning. You literally cannot learn or integrate new information while in a state of shame.
It's like trying to download a software update while your computer thinks it's being hacked. The firewall shoots up and blocks every single packet of data.
That is a perfect analogy.
You can go to therapy, read the books, do the writing, but if that firewall of shame is up,
Right.
no new code is getting written.
And this completely changes how we view self-compassion. Grace and forgiveness are not just fluffy moral concepts. They are biological requirements for neuroplasticity.
Wow, biological requirements.
When you offer yourself grace, you signal safety to the brain. That lowers the cortisol, unlocks the synapses, and allows neural pathways to change.
So, to the listener, beating yourself up for your lack of progress is biologically preventing your progress. You cannot hate yourself into healing.
You really can't.
Okay, so once the system is unlocked, you have to actively reprogram the threat center. Enter. The most cliché yet scientifically misunderstood tool in the wellness arsenal. Step 5.
Gratitude.
Look, I'm going to push back on gratitude.
Yeah.
We've all been told to keep a gratitude journal. It feels a bit like a bumper sticker at this point. Good vibes only.
I know, it triggers skepticism.
Right.
Yeah.
So distinguish for us between just saying thank you and feeling it biologically.
Yeah.
How does this hack the amygdala?
The brain is constantly scanning for threats. When Ashleigh was in agony, her brain saw her own body as a threat. There was a constant internal buzzing.
So how does she fight that?
She inventoried what was working. Even sleeping 2 hours a night, she'd say, "My eyes process light, my heart has a rhythm, my digestion works."
Just forcing the brain to look at safety.
Exactly. And the source material highlights the synced heartbeat study. Observers watched a video of a refugee receiving lost glasses and expressing profound, tearful gratitude.
And what happened?
The observer's heartbeats physically synced up. Deep gratitude creates a massive neurochemical response for healing. It releases oxytocin.
And Tammy Peterson told that wild story about the wolf coat, right?
Yes. She's driving, already under immense stress from her health issues, and a car behind her starts aggressively flashing its lights.
She gets out of her car in traffic and bends back the woman's window wiper. High stress, rage response.
But then they confront each other, the woman in the wolf coat gets out, and Tammy suddenly recognizes her humanity. She asks if Christmas is a hard time for her, and the woman crumbles. She had lost her kids.
And they end up sharing a hug in the street, going from cortisol-drenched rage to shared gratitude and empathy.
A massive physiological shift. But this raises an important question. How do we practice gratitude without invalidating our actual suffering?
Right, because if someone tells you to be grateful when you're in level 10 nerve pain, you want to punch them.
Exactly. The secret is altering the reticular activating system, the RAS. By default, it prioritizes negativity for survival. Deep gratitude physically alters the RAS to notice safety, dialing down the amygdala.
But how do we do that without toxic positivity?
Ashleigh uses the and D concept, which is brilliant. Her husband once told her, "You should be grateful, at least you're not dying." And her biological reaction was rage.
Because it invalidated her hell.
Yes. So she told him, "I am grateful I'm not dying, and today this is harder than dying."
The AD. That is so smart.
It forces the RAS to acknowledge a positive truth-generating oxytocin while completely validating the suffering so the brain doesn't feel gaslit.
Okay, so the fear network's quieted. The brain is finally ready for step 6, creating from hope, accessing the creative networks of the brain.
But you have to be careful. If you try to visualize while still in fight or flight, your brain will only generate worst-case scenarios.
Because the alarm is still ringing.
Yeah.
But once it's quiet, you tap into brain-heart coherence.
Yeah.
We have 40,000 neurons in the heart, right?
True neural rewiring requires attaching profound emotion, joy, confidence to the details of the visualization, because emotion anchors memory.
But the brain often stays in hell just because it's familiar. Visualizing hope makes the positive familiar and therefore safe.
And we have to watch out for inadvertent wiring. Tammy shared a story about the trap of starvation mode.
Oh, this was fascinating. She was on a diet of 1 pound of meat a day for a whole year due to cancer and kidney issues.
A controlled starvation just to survive.
Right. And later, she's on a tour bus, the schedule changes, and her meal is delayed by 3 hours. She felt this sudden rage.
But she realized it wasn't rage, it was terror.
The primal terror of starving. She literally engineered a trauma response in herself by trying to survive.
Yeah.
She accidentally wired her nervous system to panic around food delays and had to write down affirmations of safety to unwire it.
How behaviors initially adopted for survival become rigid phobias that keep the sympathetic nervous system inflamed.
How do we spot these accidental traps in our own lives?
You have to override the triggers by pre-teaching the brain. Ashleigh had a client who was terrified of her father. Instead of just telling her to stay calm, she had the client vividly visualize setting boundaries and feeling safe before the interaction.
Preloading the evidence of safety. That is incredible. But honestly, all of this sounds like an immense amount of work, which leads to the final puzzle piece. The dopamine of effort and the resilient brain.
This is a cultural crisis right now. It centers around a brain region called the anterior midcingulate cortex, or the AMCC.
It's connected to willpower and resilience, right? And it physically grows larger when you do hard things and shrinks when you avoid them.
Yes. And we have to redefine dopamine. We think of it as a reward molecule, but intrinsically it's the effort molecule.
But modern life is all about cheap dopamine. Uber Eats, AI, writing our emails, endless scrolling. We remove the friction of effort.
And without effort, we lose our biological capacity to handle hard things. Our AMCC atrophies. Healing is nonlinear. It took Ashleigh 9 years to get total freedom from her pain.
9 years. And people want to quit after a month. This is fascinating. We are literally shrinking our willpower by seeking life hacks.
Intrinsic dopamine from difficult effort creates enduring structural brain changes, unlike fleeting digital spikes.
So, the fact that healing feels incredibly hard isn't a sign that it's failing. It's a sign that the brain is literally lifting weights.
That's exactly what it is. We are culturally conditioning ourselves for fragility. Committing to a long-term process hypertrophies the AMCC. The goal isn't a permanently calm nervous system.
Because life has surprises.
Right. The goal is a flexible system that can spike into action and safely return to baseline.
I love that. So challenge yourself to reframe your current struggle as a workout for your anterior midcingulate cortex.
Exactly.
We have covered massive terrain today. From a 13-year-old defying a death sentence, to mental dancing, to the dark night of chronic pain, and the multi-step neuroscience of unlocking a frozen nervous system through grace, gratitude, and intense effort.
It's been an incredible deep dive, and I want to leave you with this final thought. We spent this time talking about how your brain is a prediction machine shaped by your past, but think about this. As modern life removes all our physical struggles, are we accidentally telling our brains that we are too fragile to survive the real world? The next time you face something impossibly hard, ask yourself, is this the world breaking you? Or is it your brain finally getting the resistance it needs to grow?
That is the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, take that next right step, and we will catch you next time.